Jefferson Barracks military post is located on the Mississippi River at Lee May, Missouri, which is just south of St. Louis, Missouri. It was an important and highly active U.S. Army installation from 1826 to 1946. It is the oldest operating military installation west of the Mississippi River and is now used as a base for the Army and Air National Guard. In 1826, General Edmund P. Gaines and Brigadier Henry Atkinson, along with explorer William Clark and Missouri Governor John Miller, spent several days searching the banks of the Mississippi River for the perfect location for a new post to replace Fort Bellefontaine. The site near the city of Carondelet, 10 miles south of St. Louis, Missouri, was recommended and then approved by Major General Jacob J. Brown, commanding general of the Army. On July 10, 1826, 2 days after the deed for the land was signed, the first military troops, 6 officers, and 245 enlisted men of companies A, B, H, and I, commanded by Private Major Stephen Watts Kirby, arrived at the new post and started building temporary quarters that they named Tianamart Miller in honor of Governor John Miller. In 1827, the military post was formally named Jefferson Barracks. The laborers' house was constructed in 1851 to house civilian laborers who constructed the ordnance section of Jefferson Barracks. Later it housed the ordnance keeper and his family. The first conflict that the men of Jefferson Barracks were involved in was the Black Hawk War in 1832. Troops were deployed from the Jefferson Barracks to push the hostile Indians back into their village in present-day Iowa. Chief Black Hawk was captured and brought back to the Jefferson Barracks. In 1832, the United States Regiment of Dragoons, which were forerunners of the American cavalry, were formed and stationed at Jefferson Barracks. The Dragoons, who were trained to fight mounted or dismounted, were the first unit of permanent cavalry in the United States Army. The summer kitchen can be seen to the west of the laborer's house. In the days before air conditioning, a summer kitchen was used to remove the heat of cooking from the main house. But by the 1900s, the summer kitchen was eliminated. It is possible to trace the changing composition of American military society across time through the records of Jefferson Barracks. Women played an important, though not always recognized, role as officers' wives, laundresses, volunteer nurses, and later in the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps, as well as civilian employees. The stable was built in 1851 to house 4 horses and 2 wagons that were used to haul munitions from the St. Louis Arsenal to the ordnance magazines at the Jefferson Barracks. The architectural features of having 2 doors is unique. visitor center, labor's house, and stable were built of limestone from a quarry just east of here by the Mississippi River. Countless American military heroes served at the post over the years. Early leaders, Atkinson, Leavenworth, and Dodge had already won fame in the War of 1812 before coming to Jefferson Barracks. The post's size and military importance in the mid-19th century meant that most rising young West pioneers saw service there. The old ordnance room was the first of two limestone buildings built in the Jefferson Barracks Park for the purpose of storing gunpowder. It was constructed in 1851 by master builder Francis Quinnett of St. Louis. The cost, just over $18,000, included the stone wall around the building. Some said Quinnett could not erect a quality building for that amount, but the building still remains in use today. The history of Jefferson Barracks is one of national significance because it illuminates the organizational history of the U.S. Army for the 120 years in which it served as an active duty post. The changes of Jefferson Barracks' function and the repeated cycles of growth reflect the story of an American military and its changing missions and relationships to the nation. This provided a pool of experienced leadership from which came hundreds of Civil War generals on both sides of the conflict, including Ulysses S. Grant and Robert E. Lee. Post commanders of later periods, Guy Henry, Walter Kruger, and Walter C. Short, took leading roles in the Spanish-American War and World War II. The history of the United States Army has been heavily influenced by the deep distrust felt by the leaders of our revolutionary period regarding the establishment of a professional military institution that might endanger the democracy. Until the modern era, this belief prevailed, preventing the growth and maintenance of a large standing army. During World War II, this area was part of the Reception Center 1772. From March 1941 to July 1943, more than 125,000 troops were processed through this reception center. The center operated 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Some of the buildings in this area were known as Series 700. They were 63-man temporary barracks that were 29 foot wide, 80 foot long, and 2 stories tall. The powder magazine was constructed in 1857. The walls are 4 foot thick, made of limestone with an interior arched ceiling and a wooden floor. If gunpowder exploded, it would take the path of least resistance, blowing through the floor with a concussion, causing each arch to fall, smothering the fire. The walls and roof would remain intact, so for all intent and purposes, the building would remain usable. With its central location on the river, Jefferson Barracks was the perfect spot to keep any of the ordnance shells that would be needed by any unit along the Mississippi. Jefferson Barracks would be the only post of its kind in the United States at the time. Because of the location, every troop movement or supply movement west of the Mississippi would be funneled through this site. The ordnance section of the base would grow to house one of the largest arsenals in the United States before the Civil War. The only buildings left from this period of the time are built of limestone from the local quarry. Jefferson Barracks became a major military post during the Mexican-American War from 1846 to 1848, when it served as a rest and supply station for the troops heading to Mexico. The United States Army's strength in 1845 was 8,509 men, with the majority of troops stationed west of the Mississippi River. The primary function of Jefferson Barracks was as a launching point for a ready reserve force for the western frontier. In 1844, the War Department assigned General Zachary Taylor and the 3rd and 4th Infantries, then stationed at the barracks, to Fort Jessup in Louisiana as a precautionary measure in anticipation of Mexican resistance to the annexation of Texas. In 1845, this vanguard force moved into the newly named state and was bolstered by the assignments of every available unit in the West, growing to roughly one-half the entire enlistment of the Army. As you walk down the Memorial Walkway, you will see the Battle of the Bulge Memorial Monument and the bronze statue commemorating the heroic American soldiers who defeated the German armies in the Ardennes campaign. The bronze GI statue is dedicated to all those veterans who served our great country during World War II. During World War II, Jefferson Barracks was a major reception center for U.S. troops being drafted into the military. It also served as an important basic training site for the Army, then later was the 1st Army Air Corps training site. During World War II, Jefferson Barracks had a peak area of 1,518 acres and had space for 16 officers and 1,500 enlisted persons. Jefferson Barracks was decommissioned as a military post in 1946 with the end of World War II. After Jefferson Barracks was decommissioned, portions of the grounds were sold off for construction of houses. Some of the barracks were acquired by the St. Louis County Housing Authority as temporary low-cost housing. Those were demolished in the 1960s and replaced by the current Jefferson Townhomes development. Jefferson Barracks County Park includes several museums that house artifacts and the history of Jefferson Barracks while it was an active United States military post. St. Louis was a critical stronghold for Union forces on the eve of the Civil War. Its control of the Mississippi River traffic was vital to both maintain supply lines between the western and eastern halves of the nation and to stage military actions into the south. The St. Louis Arsenal held the largest supplies of weaponry and ammunition west of the river, and Jefferson Barracks, just to its south, had been a major launching platform for military actions throughout the West. The Army of 1860 numbered only 16,215